It was just do what he says, gotta stay calm.
A training exercise this morning left students literally hanging onto the edge of their seats. Here's the scenario. A school bus is en route to an event when it's suddenly hijacked. 13 ABC's Zach Pitts shows us how this ride is something some of these students will never forget.
The fear is real as a man hijacks a school bus filled with students. It's a drill, but for some on this bus, it's a nightmare turned into reality. As emotions run wild on this bus, an audience on the other side of town watches it all on a live feed. It's an audience made up of school teachers, administrators, and transportation directors. This heart-pounding drill is a lesson for them.
Every driver, administrator will take something away from this, saying that, wow, this could actually happen on my bus.
The bus eventually makes its way to the same lot where the crowd of school officials have been watching all the terror unfold. But the drill is just getting started. It's also where first responders and SWAT teams are standing by to rescue those on board. One by one, students are taken into safety. Students we spoke to say every moment on the bus felt like the real thing.
I didn't know what was going on because, like, at the start, he pulled out he was just a normal person. He pulls out a gun and then a mask and puts it all on. And he starts tying everybody down, and it just got really scary.
Organizers say planning for the drill began in May, focusing on every detail.
When a bad person would board the bus, the driver would not know that he or she was going to be on the bus, so we wanted to make it as realistic as possible.
Students say it's an experience they'll never forget and one they hope to never have to relive.
It feels good to know that when this does happen, there's people who are there to stop it.
Zach Pitts, 13 ABC, Action News.
Welcome back, everyone, to GGN. This is part 3, the final part for today for Monday, August 19th, 2013. I'm Darko, and my website is ggnonline.net, and on YouTube, ddarko2012, ddarko2013. All right, you just saw this one. SWAT team has real-life terror drill on school bus filled with terrified children, getting the children used to the police state tactics, getting them conditioned to submit and obey. Another example of how they're turning America into a complete police state. So this is all justified, and you saw the people watching in the crowd. You know, that's real nice, real good stuff. Then from August 18th, militarized police overkill is becoming the normal as officers shoot first and ask questions later. They say, is it true that America is moving towards a militarized police force, a police force that is more intent on taking out the trash than on building bridges with the community? So, but the thing that you need to think about, it's kind of like gun control. They're not going to just take guns away and make it hard to get ammunition. They're going to flood society with weapons, with cheaply made weapons. It just basically keeps basically the weapon manufacturers' profits going. It helps R&D for the Army and the police state to fund their weapons so they get better. And two other things is the society where people would take a bus full of children hostage. This is a sign of a very sick society. And a society that we live in, it's all about treatment, and that's not about actually curing. It's about just putting a patch on it and sweeping it under the rug. So you get a humongous militarized police state instead of addressing the issues why someone would want to do something like that. So we're living in a society now where people have not really much control over their lives. Some do, but then they realize, well, they don't, because there's so many other people that are willing to just accept this as a new normal and say this is okay, allow the indoctrination to set in and say this is good for us. So basically we just remain kind of enslaved, and nothing really changes. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be unemployed, people that are mad at their bosses, people that are mad at someone leaving them in a divorce or whatever, and they're going to get frustrated and they're going to feel powerless, because it's exactly what most of us are. I know you don't want to hear this and it sounds depressing, but as far as making real big change on a grand level, planetary level, it's probably an 80% chance, if not more, that nothing's going to really happen to change this. We got to live out the results of these actions that have been taken for generations from us, from our parents, from our grandparents, from our great-grandparents, And so someone going in and shooting up their boss and everybody else is just their way of saying, well, screw all of you, I'm pretty much powerless. And this is what they flood the weapons into our society for, because they want people to vent. Along those lines, as far as basically venting so that there's no real opposition or revolution or change that happens, you have a lot of the people that are preppers and survivalists, and they worry about the government taking their guns away. Well, look at it this way. There's so many weapons in American culture that there's been no change. There's been no revolution. So, see, it's like they're self-policing. So if violence isn't going to change the system, then it's going to have to be done passively. Well, is it, through Occupy and all these movements, they're all controlled opposition. They're not grassroots. So ultimately, people need to stop being naive. They need to realize first that they are being enslaved, and they are being led down all kinds of different rabbit holes. So it says here for Haarp status moving into weather modification. This is from August 18th, 9:30 a.m. Current long wave frequency magnitude readings, and it's pretty high out there in California, Nevada, and Oregon, and basically the west, and in the southeast, in the Florida and Panhandle and southern states. And then in Europe, pretty much moderate, and it's moderate in northern Europe, including Scandinavia and the UK, and lighter or easier on basically Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. From August 17th, Australia and New Zealand, they are still getting fried out there, especially New Zealand. They've been going for almost a week or two now. But it's pretty much dead in northern Australia. Something that you guys have probably heard as far as Haarp going down, Alaska's controversial Haarp facility closed. When will it come back online? From July 17th, 2013. I never really covered it, but it says here that Haarp has drawn its fair share of conspiracy theories over the years, as it sits in Alaska, an array of antennas intended to heat up the Earth's ionosphere and study the effects. Fringe thinkers have linked Haarp to everything from the earthquake of Japanese earthquake in 2011 to mind control and hurricanes. But if there are no major earthquakes or bizarre global weather events in the coming weeks or months, the folks at Haarp may have some explaining to do, as it's been shut since June. They said the power turned off at Haarp waits for the hope for change and contractors to operate the facility. So it's a government-owned facility, run, overseen by the U.S. Air Force and through DARPA research. So it says here that this basically ran by the Air Force before in Massachusetts, but is currently overseen by a research unit in Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. It says here the person who helps manage Haarp says that currently the site is abandoned. It comes down to money. We don't have any. It was a surprise to all of us to hear that it was shutting down. And one thing that we've seen, at least this year, the majority of the year, is that it's been cooler and there's been less frequencies pulsing the ripples through the clouds. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But I do know that there's other Haarp facilities, Haarp Peru, Brazil, Puerto Rico. I didn't know about these ones, but I knew about Puerto Rico and Norway and Alaska. But they have one supposedly or allegedly in Area 51, one in Long Island, UK, in Russia, and of course in Australia. So this is a global system, global infrastructure, so if one goes down doesn't mean that all of the other rest go down. I mean, that's how Haarp works. It uses it all together, manipulating the ionosphere and directing that energy. 2.3 thousand evacuated in Idaho wildfires. A vast, rapidly moving blaze threatens ski resorts. 2,300 residences have been evacuated. The wildfires have been going on for about 11 days. Severe floods killed 37 in northeast China. It's risen to 37 people after the worst flooding for decades in northeast China. Then to Russia, at least 20,000 people evacuate homes in Russian floods. And this says here that Russia's border with China, at least 100,000 people may need to abandon their homes if the region's biggest floods for 120 years gets worse, as the Russian minister dismissed officials convicted over deadly floods in South Russia. 4 new former officials on Monday were convicted of negligence for failing to alert residents in the southern Russia area last year about impending floods that killed 170 people. Many people were sleeping when the floods came crashing in. So the Meteorological Service issued alerts warning of possible torrential rains and flash floods on July 5th, but local authorities took no action before the floods hit the following day. It's about the last ice age found in Antarctic ice. So the study says it turns out warming happened around the same time everywhere. They said here that Antarctica wasn't late to the party during the planet's last ice age. They said the northern hemisphere's ice age ended some 20,000 years ago, but they believe West Antarctica didn't experience that end for another 2,000 years. They indicate that warming happened between 2,000 and 4,000 years earlier than thought. They usually thought of the continent basically being passive, waiting for other things to act, but it shows that that it knows what the North is doing. It says here that West Antarctica is one of the fastest warming places on the planet. The region in the center has warmed 3 times faster than the average rate of global warming, some 4.4 degrees since 1958. I think some of this has to do with Haarp pulsing it, but for whatever it's worth, we have an image update from August 18th, 2013 of Antarctic sea ice. You can actually see 81 to 2010 how it was down here. And of course it goes up and down, but as far as the averages go, you have 2012 down here, and then you have 2013 here, and of course there's the 80s, so it's actually increasing. But you'll actually hear nonsense like this: global warming expands Antarctic sea ice, so in a polar paradox, melting land ice helps sea ice to grow. So people shouldn't question this as being, well, this is kind of defies common sense, which doesn't mean common sense is always right, but it's man-made climate change. It's being done by man through Haarp. And to Mars, you keep seeing all this Mars mission news. Millionaire seeks an assist for Inspiration Mars mission, and this is from August 16th. The prospect of joining the first team to colonize Mars has proven to be so wildly alluring that more than 100,000 people have applied for the spot, despite the fact that they'll only get a one-way ticket. That's if they can raise $6 billion or more, which is what the project is expected to cost. Mars food scientists and 4-month mock space mission in Hawaii. This was just recently, August 14th. So 6 scientists emerged from the space habitat in Hawaii's Big Island on Tuesday, ending a 4-month mission, simulated mission designed to study how best to feed astronauts during the long trip to Mars. I think China's even done the same thing. I don't know how long it was, but it was a long time. A Utah girl dies after accident when freak wind carried her away from her backyard trampoline. So he suffered injuries after a freak gust of wind carried away a backyard trampoline that she was on. So the 9-year-old was trying to put on her shoes when a large gust of wind lifted the trampoline off the ground, carrying it to about 50 yards. The spokeswoman said the trampoline was anchored and described the girl's death as a freak accident. A woman who was clinically dead for 42 minutes brought back to life by Australian doctors. But I think it has more to do with this device, this compression device called the Lucas 2, the only kind in Australia to keep the blood flowing to her brain. Basically had a major heart attack when one of her major arteries fully blocked. So this kind of gets into an ethical realm. A famous anti-gay Russian MP mauls homeless resettlement to rural areas. It's kind of weird because the homeless are usually smashed into cities, but moving the homeless to the scarcely populated regions would further eliminate the threat of contagious diseases, which there is some truth to that because people in rural areas are not as close to each other, so they're less likely to get it. But of course, a lot of people now put them in public schools and that, and a lot of rural areas, as far as where people work, they're just as bad as cities. So here's the kicker. They will provide regular vaccination against dangerous infections. Like some people said, how about just getting them jobs, you know? Actually, they didn't say that. They said, why not put them in forced labor camps? So study unveils clue to near-death experience mystery. Well, this, of course, discounts any form of spiritual experience. They said the research carried out on dying rats indicates a surge of electrical activity in the brain could be responsible for those experiences described by near-death survivors. So this is what they keep trying to propose. That's just brain neurons firing still. Still interesting. They said here that when they basically die, they could give rise to a heightened state of consciousness when the heart stops beating and blood flows to the brain, or what they call clinical death. The animals show brain activity patterns characteristic of a conscious perception. Switzerland may start DNA tests on African asylum seekers suspected of lying about family connections. In June, Swiss voters in a referendum overwhelmingly approved stricter asylum criteria, notably the removal of military desertion as a valid reason for asylum. They're also among the European countries that welcomes the most asylum seekers in proportion to its population. An elderly Russian woman convicted over xenophobic graffiti said you might think it'd be a teenage neo-Nazi, but it was an elderly woman who was recently convicted of spray painting walls with anti-Tajik messages. They called for these migrant workers to be physically abused. And here we go, World Athletics Championships marred by Russian anti-gay and nationalistic rhetoric. They said their controversy over homophobia was tarnishing the game. Then here we go, Russian gold medalists kiss on medal stand at World Championships to protest anti-gay laws. Church of Russian anti-gay propaganda lawmaker, his house has been firebombed. They said unidentified scum threw a Molotov cocktail at the church. Remember the singer who was banned because he was ex-gay? New Jersey bans gay conversion therapy. Thank you.